Welcome to the Old Guy AI podcast, brought to you by MongoDB. And now, here's Scott Sanchez and Pete Johnson.
Hello there. Today is Monday, November 10th, and this is the Old Guy AI podcast. You're only getting one old guy today because there was no hour this week that any combination of myself, Matt, and Scott were available all at the same time. And it's going to be on one topic and one very important topic, and that's AWS reInvent. So for those that don't know, every year, the week after Thanksgiving, AWS holds their giant cloud conference in Las Vegas. This is going to be my 10th year here in a couple of weeks going. And I'm going to give you some insights from someone who's been a lot for the kinds of things to look for, the kinds of things to emphasize. What gets the highlights, and I'll talk about a little bit, are the keynotes, the expo floor, the replay party. But there's a secret ingredient to go into reInvent that I'll talk to you about. Now, the first time I went to reInvent, it felt like a middle school science fair. The place where you now do badge pickup was the entire expo floor. It was super small. It was very intimate. You could scan the room and see people you knew. You could hear a pitch on the expo floor without getting elbowed in the kidney. It was a very, very different experience. But now 60,000 plus people, that doesn't even count the people who aren't badged that are hanging around for other meetings and so forth. So it's this huge conglomeration of tech people all descending on Las Vegas the same week. Now, because it's that many people, there's lines for everything. There's lines to get into sessions. There's lines to get a $47 sandwich. There's lines to get into breakouts that you signed up for, even though there's no room to get into them. There's even lines to get on the shuttle buses that take you from one hotel to the other because somebody forgot that these casinos are designed to make it difficult to escape them. So transportation is a huge issue when you're there. You won't make every session that you signed up for. It's just physically impossible. You have to know that going in. Let's talk about the keynotes because that's where the headliners are. That's what will generate the most news is the keynotes. The first one typically happens on Tuesday morning with CEO Matt Garman. That's when the major product announcements come. They'll have different partners and customers come on stage and talk about working with AWS in different ways. And there's actually a session for press and analysts the night before so that they get a preview of what's going to happen. That's how they're able to launch their articles once they clear embargo. Once that keynote is over, they can publish all kinds of things because they saw it the night before. They get to write about it that morning and then release it once the announcement has been official. If you're one of those that's going to try to live tweet or live whatever your social media practice is, know that the Wi-Fi gets super crowded because you're trying to cram, I think it's something like 30,000 people, 40,000 people into one room, and that doesn't go well. There's usually one kind of show-stopping moment. The biggest one was I was there the year that they rolled an 18-wheeler out onto the stage. And when you're in that room and you felt that rumble, you were very aware of the fact that that stage is not on the ground floor of that building. It's actually on like the third floor. If you go out, there's 2 levels down to where you can go pick up taxis and where you can drop off bags and where some of the meeting rooms are. That year it was a little scary. You could feel the floor rumble. I don't think we'll get anything quite that big this year, but be on the lookout for some kind of big, show-stopping announcement at the CEO keynote. Now, every year, Dr. Werner Vogels, the AWS CTO, also gives a keynote. He's on Thursday this year. Werner's not to be missed. He makes a database migration sound like a hero's journey, and he always drops like a combination of product nuggets and sort of philosophy nuggets. He always wears some cool t-shirt, bonus points if you can figure out what the logo on his shirt is. There's also an AI keynote, a special one of those on Wednesday, but don't sleep on, when is this one? Thursday morning, the Peter DeSantis keynote. So Peter DeSantis runs the infrastructure. So he's responsible for all the data centers and all the gear that goes in there. That's where they typically talk about like the chipsets. That's where they announced Inferentia a couple years ago and the Trainium and some of the things they do with the Nitro chips. There's always some cool thing that Peter drops in those. So don't sleep on his keynote if you're going to go to the keynotes. Next, let's talk about the expo floor, which is humongous. And I've been part of teams that set up booths there. You typically will find the smaller and sometimes more interesting ones in the back. Those are like 10 by 10s or 5 by 10s. Those are smaller ones for earlier stage startups. That's where some of the cooler ideas are. You'll see the behemoth ones sort of towards the beginning of the show floor. and it's very crowded. Like I said, originally they had this middle school science fair feel, but now it's almost like its own city inside of there. You can see all kinds of pitches. You can get all kinds of swag that you can take home, usually taking home more than you actually need to. Just know that every time someone scans your badge, you now are giving them permission to send you email for the next 24 months, trying to pitch more things to you. That might get you entry to win a drone or win a Lego set, but also know that you got to figure out a way to get that home as well. The more savvy booths are the ones that figure that problem out and they'll ship it for you. So be on the lookout for that kind of thing as well. What I like to do at the show booths is not hear the pitches for the products they're selling, but hear them for like the structure and how does someone try to tell the story. There's going to be more pitches on that showroom floor than there are anywhere else the rest of the year. You can hear good pitches and hear bad ones. Go listen to a bunch and figure out what are the nuggets you can take in terms of structure or the way that they're delivered so that you can use them for your own pitches and see if you can spot the ones that are struggling and avoid the things that they're doing when they're struggling their pitches. At every reInvent, there's always a big party. It's called a replay. I was too old for it 12 years ago. I didn't get any younger. There's typically a lot of cool video games. There's always some DJ I never heard of that has like bass that rattles your rib cage. If you're under 30, you love it. But if you're like me and you're over 50, so you can get some of the food and you can play some of the games, but that's not something that I would stay at all that long if you're as old as I am. Now, I mentioned at the top that there's one aspect of reInvent that nobody talks about. They always talk about the keynotes or the show floor or even replay. And it's embodied by one location that is easy to miss if you walk by it. So the show floor, the keynote stage, and like the big slide that I think last year maybe Datadog sponsored, where you can take a slide from the top floor down to the first floor where the meeting rooms and the baggage claim. But if you walk down a humongous hallway, it's very long, goes past where you get your badges. When you come out of it, there's two theaters. And if you go to the left, that goes to the casino. If you go to the right, that goes to where all the restaurants are. But sort of right outside one of the performance venues, specifically the Summit Showroom, there's a big Starbucks. It used to be called Cafe Press, but now it's a great big Starbucks. And that is the place to meet people. The aggregate value of business deals that happen at that Starbucks every year cannot be measured by any financial instrument known to humanity. It is the place to meet people and talk about what new things are going to happen and where big deals start getting executed. And if not specifically at that Starbucks, what that Starbucks represents. Really, the golden nugget of being at reInvent is the networking. Seeing old friends you haven't seen in a while, meeting new friends, talking about business deals. I've gotten jobs there. I've started conversations that was, hey, did you know so-and-so is in the lobby right now? Do you want to go talk to them? Not knowing somebody was there. And eventually that turned into a new job. And that's happened to me twice. So don't discount, even if you can't get into your sessions, even if your feet hurt from going to the expo floor, even if you're tired of listening to the keynotes, the big takeaway to go to reInvent is for the networking and the people. Those hallway conversations, those let's get coffee, let's go grab a bite. Those are the conversations, like that's the dark matter of reInvent. That's what really makes the tech industry go, is the ability to meet all those people at one place. I've said this many times. I wrote my first line of code as a sixth grader in 1981. I didn't know 60 people who liked computers as much as I did. And now there's 1,000 times that descend on Vegas for the same week every year. Because what nobody really tells you is that the tech industry isn't really about technology. It's about the people. It's about the people who are coming up with new implementations, coming up with new sales models, coming up with different ways of thinking about how to change the way that people conduct their lives for the better. So take it from someone who stood in the lines, who's missed some sessions, who's paid $47 for that sandwich, that the reason I keep coming back year after year is for the people and for those golden interactions that you have no idea where they're going to take you. You can watch the keynotes online. You can see pictures of the show floor and see video recordings of the pitches, but you can't replicate being there and having the networking opportunity. So I'll be there in a couple of weeks. Hope to see you there as well. If you see me hanging out at that Starbucks, feel free to pull up a chair. We'll talk about what you're working on. Just don't order anything complicated. That line's already long.
This has been the Old Guy AI Podcast. Views expressed here do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the sponsors or the employers of any hosts or guests.